Good afternoon. My name is Fabiola Janet Mellado Mora, and today we are going to discuss about some aspects related to the COVID pandemic. I welcome the invited specialists, Dr. María de los Ángeles Martínez Nicolás, Professor Gustavo Domínguez Márquez, and Juan Manuel Palafox Rodriguez, economist. We know that the pandemic has caused many negative changes. However, where it had a greatest impact was in the economic, educational, and health fields. For this reason, there are still many doubts to resolve in some aspects. For example, currently the infections have already decreased, and therefore many people in the world have already resumed their daily activities, such as going to school, work, training centers, etc. Do you think it was prudent to incite the population to resume their daily activities, even though we know that the pandemic is not really over yet?
It seems to me a reckless action taking into account the behavior of the population. Not all people abide by the regulation. Variations of the virus are still being managed and studied, which have been shown to have a faster level of contagion. Encouraging people to return to activities seems to me that it will lead us to resurgence of case and even to a state of emergency. Before proposing a return to common activities, a concrete action plan should be planned for each person and that they show themselves committed to doing so. In 1 or 2 years, when more than 80% of the population is vaccinated, we will be returning to activities with the security of being more protected.
From my point of view, it is being hastily because the pandemic is not over, and we will continue to be exposed with this action. Education is being affect on a large scale because not enough is learned in the classroom. Some schools begin to give face-to-face classes. The idea is good, but not now because even then we will continue with the probability of a contagion.
From an economic point of view, it is absolutely necessary that the activities in the companies of each country continue, since if it stops, we can have a collapse in the economy from which it is very difficult to recover. Since companies are them not working, they begin to fall into a bankruptcy, causing people to lose their jobs, which will start a chaos in society as there is no cash flow. Although, as mentioned, the pandemic is not over yet, so it is mandatory to protect ourselves and the others with the necessary sanitary measures.
Some countries have been working on developing a vaccine that could fight this virus. Russia is part of this, so that I will start with you, doctor. Could you tell me if you think that the application of the vaccine will be enough to control this pandemic and prevent a possible resurgence of the virus?
The issue of vaccine is quite delicate, considering the number of inhabitants in Mexico. Currently, less than 20% of the population has received the vaccine. In fact, it is planned that in the following days, the vaccines will be applied to people between 30 and 39 years. Of course, the vaccine does not guarantee not to be infected. It is not a cure. It is a protection in the immune system that will prevent a critical reaction to infection. The vaccine is another step at the end of the pandemic. However, it is also up to us to continue with hygiene care.
It is known that in recent months, the reactivation of the rhythm of life is being planned. What are the action plans that we will be considered to make this safe?
Of course, all the measures recommended by the Secretary of Health are being used. The use of masks, antibacterial gel, and keep your distance. However, there must be clear measures for each sector, educational, economic, labor, and daily activities. In the case of schools, teachers have received the vaccine, but the students have not. This means more than 19% of the occupants of the school. For this reason, it must be ensured that everyone who attend will have undergone medical examination. Less than 15 students will be taking classes in a classroom maintained their distance. There is constant cleaning and they are allowed to go outside every 2 hours or less. For economic sector, restaurant can only be filled up to 30% capacity, mostly outdoor, and it will always be recommended to the general population to order at home to avoid crowds. And in the case of office, each of the workers will have received training to understand the new measures with the bosses will have to provide the equipment and there will even be change in the schedule to avoid that large groups or workers are found in one office.
On the other hand, as far as education is concerned, many students have decided to drop out the school because they don't have access to the necessary tools such as internet, a cell phone, or some device to be able to connect to their classes. In addition, the students who decide to continue studying have stated that they are not really learning anything or have dropped grades because they are not in the right space to continue their education. This time I'm going to start with you, Professor Gustavo. Do you think that this low performance in educational level will improve in the coming months, or will it take a few years for students to regain the level that they had when they had face-to-face classes?
If we will be nursing, the only classes are being complicated by different situations that make the student not understand the class to the fullest or miss some subjects. I think the education level is not falling as such. Maybe you will have heard of people are taking advantage of the time at home to read books or the research on a topic of interest. These people will have been using their time for something productive that will somehow be by very useful to them in a few months. So I just consider that it may take a few months to regain knowledge. I think this will depend on how some will return to school and who willing the students will be to take up some topics.
If school activities can be resumed in 3 months, would it be wise for both students and teachers to return to classes, or would it be better to wait a little more?
I think so because by the time we'll have ended the pandemic and we will all be vaccinated and there will be the possible of returning to face classes, often with the measures of both students, teachers, and the school for a safe return.
Another aspect that was affected as a result of the pandemic was the economic, because thousands of jobs and resources were affected in several countries. To better talk about this situation, I will start with you, Mr. Economist. Could you tell me what changes will there be in the economy at the end of the pandemic? Will there be a quick recovery, or will it take a long process to recover what was lost?
Well, there is a great uncertainty regarding this. There has been talk about several changes that we will have, where talking about normality is a relative issue. Once the pandemic is over, the return to normal economy will be gradual and a great change for businessmen. All this between hygiene and safety measures, avoiding crowding of people and checking the health of all to avoid a regrowth. Since, as my partner mentioned it, the vaccine is not a cure, otherwise a protection for our immune system. Adding a little for the first question and answering the second, there are several assumptions as to how the return to normality will be. There it will be quick or we will need more time. The option of making it fast is possible, but the most difficult. So that contrary to this, the scenario is that is most likely is somewhat slow but safe recovery, since if it is done quickly, there is a risk of misjudgment and that there are infections again. So that we need is the necessary hygiene and health measures are observed.
In conclusion, and in accordance with those mentioned by experts, it is possible that by having the necessary sanitary measures, we will be able to resume our activities. In this way, the effects left by the COVID pandemic will be decreasing, and those different sectors will be able to recover, like the economy. First, it is the sector that needs to move forward in a positive way since many activities in each country depend on it. Second, the second sector is educational, since students need to resume their classes to have a better learning. And the third is the health sector, because it will be possible to have better conditions to attend to people who require any type of medical attention, as hospital will no longer be as saturated by people affected by the virus, so we'll be having better prognosis if we continue to comply with what the authorities ask us regarding our safety and hygiene. It's all, teacher. Thank you for your attention.